Welcome back. Today we're going to consider the church leader particularly and the insecurity or security of that leader. See, one of the biggest travesties in the church today, one of the biggest hindrances to growth, can be the insecurity of the senior pastor, the senior elder, however your church is structured, the one who is ultimately and finally responsible, the one who makes the decisions, the one who seems to influence things within board meetings or elders meetings. Churches can rise or fall on leadership, but they can equally rise or fall on the insecurity of a leader. Proverbs 29 verse 12 tells us, if a ruler listens to lies, all his officials become wicked. In other words, it's only going to take one person with insecurity in their life to begin to infect other people within the leadership structure of the church. I don't know if you've ever met those kind of pastors who are always talking themselves up. You know, when they get together in their gatherings with other leaders, it might be for their fraternal breakfasts or their regional conferences or even Zoom meetings nowadays. And the first thing out of their mouths is how big their church is, how many baptisms they've had, how many converts they saw over their services over the weekend. And it's all about numbers. You know, Jack Hayford, one of the most renowned pastors in the United States of America, tells a story in one of his books, and he says this, that he was speaking at a conference in a town, and after the conference, after he'd spoken, a pastor came up to him and said, listen, Brother Hayford, anytime you're in my area, please pop in and see me. And they got to talking about their churches and everything, and Jack Hayford said to this pastor, so how big is your church? And the guy said, well, it's between 8 and 850. And Jack Hayford was very impressed. He knew the town, he knew the area. He thought, wow, that's amazing to have a church that size. Anyway, sometime later, Jack Hayford did happen to be in that area and gave the pastor a call. And pastor was a bit shocked to hear from him and went along to meet Hayford and all the rest of it. And Jack Hayford's waiting for the invitation to come and preach. And so eventually the subject came up, and the story goes something like this. The pastor said, well, Brother Hayford, I'm not sure you'd want to come and preach at my church. We only have 80 people. And Jack Hayford said, well, you told me you had between 8 and 850. And he said, well, 80 is a number between 8 and 850. You see, it's the insecurity of a leader that tries to big up, tries to inflate what is happening, because for some reason they feel dissatisfied with what is happening in their church. They might be comparing with others. I remember organizing a united prayer meeting with several of our churches from our own movement in the early days of my ministry, and we, myself and a colleague and one other, we were meeting together, and we were trying to predict and project what size of venue we would need for the event. And one of the pastors said, well, I'm going to bring along 200 people. And we were amazed. We were like, wow, we're going to have to get a huge venue, which we did. We got a local school that could seat like 500 people in his auditorium. Come the night, he brought 6 people. And 6 people was his entire church. See, insecurities take us to a place where our credibility is lowered. It takes us to a place of comparison where we consistently look at others. I'm amazed at some of the things that are happening at the moment during these years, the year of lockdown, where some missionaries are flourishing and some are not. And that's comparison, because restrictions are different depending which country you're in. And those can be based on travel restrictions or numbers that are allowed to meet, if indeed churches are allowed to meet at all. Don't compare with one another. It's going to get you nowhere. You see, the killer question that pastors are always going to ask each other when they get together is, how big is your church? Success in your area may look very different to success in someone else's vicinity. If you're in a rural area working in a village, and we work in many villages at the moment in southern Africa, we can't compare ourselves to a city-based ministry. City-based churches in South Africa are very often mega churches or huge, or at least that's the impression. But when you're meeting with 20 or 30 or 40 people in a tin shack in the middle of nowhere, I want to tell you something, that's still success. Comparison to others is deadly. What we need to do is to learn something from Jesus. Jesus in John chapter 6 displays amazing security. In John chapter 6, the teaching is hard. People say this is a hard teaching. And it says there that many people left him. They left Jesus, the greatest leader of all time. This is after he's turned water into wine. He's performed the healing of an official's son. He's healed a paralytic at a pool in Bethesda. He's fed 5,000. I mean, he has walked on water. People still left him. People still walked away. And Jesus shows an amazing amount of security, because he says to his disciples in verse 66, he says there, "Do you also want to leave me? Do you also want to leave me?" And he would have let them go. This isn't about a fight to try and keep people, to try and hold on to people. He would have let them walk away. That is amazing security. You see, Jesus' security came from knowing who he was and knowing who called him. And that's where our security comes from as well. You see, we lose nothing by celebrating others' success, by cheering them on, by championing their cause. Nelson Mandela famously said this. I'll read these words to you. He says, "As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. We are liberated from our own fear. Our presence automatically liberates others." Now there's a thought. Someone once said, a candle loses nothing by sharing its flame with another candle. My pastor friends, my church leader friends, and people watching this, understand this. Your security is in Jesus Christ himself, who you are in Christ, and what you're called to be in Christ. And beyond that, nothing else really matters. God bless you.